Hey, welcome in to BBN Network. Today is the championship special where we go back in history and read all of the championships, all 70 years, from 1939 to 2019. This podcast will probably be very long. We'll take a lot of breaks, probably between 20 years. It will be a long podcast, so bear in with us. This is gonna be a fun podcast too. So we're gonna reveal the answer that was yesterday. The answer is Stanford. They beat Stanford in the semifinal to go to the championship and play Utah. So if y'all were wondering what that answer was, it is Stanford. So now, before we get into the championship special, we're going to talk about some headlines. Today, Keon Brooks announced that he is coming back. And also what was weird was what Emmanuel Quickly posted. So he was crying that he was listening to the championship music and started crying. So he might come back. And Isaac Harms, the 7'3" center from Purdue, might go to Kentucky. It's a possibility that he will, which is good for us because he's pretty tall and good. That's the headlines of today. So now we're going to get into the championship special after we take a little break. We'll be right back. This is BBN Network. Welcome back to BBN Network, the championship special for today. Alright, so we're going to go back to 1939, where Oregon and Ohio State played in the championship game in Evanston, Illinois. That is a weird location for a Final Four. The Oregon Ducks were 29-5. They were coached by Howard Hobson and beat Ohio State 46-33. This was the first championship ever recorded by the NCAA tournament. It's Oregon's only championship, so that's kind of history for them because it was their only one. And also, they didn't make it to another Final Four to 2017, where they lost to North Carolina, who was the champions. Alright, so now that'll end 1939. Let's go to 1940. Indiana went to the Final Four, coached by Branch McCracken. Played Kansas in Kansas City, Missouri. Indiana was 20-3 on the season. They beat Kansas in the championship 60-42. This is the start of a good legacy and top 10 NCAA school for Indiana. They start off in 1940 with their first championship. Now, 1941, Wisconsin, coached by Bud Foster. I'm not sure if he's the same one who coached Duke in 1978. Probably not. But Bud Foster coached against Washington State in Kansas City, Missouri at the Final Four championship game, where Wisconsin barely won 39-34. Wisconsin had a pretty good season, 20-3 on the season, just like Indiana. These teams, rarely ever do you see a team with 10 losses winning the championship. It's rare. Maybe like Villanova, which we'll get into later, and Kansas, I think, one time. So now, 1942. This is Stanford's only championship. Stanford played Dartmouth. Dartmouth was a pretty good school back then. Stanford, coached by Everett Dean, beat Dartmouth 53-38 in Kansas City, Missouri. Oh yeah, and the last game was in Kansas City too, so 3 years in a row that was in Kansas City. They beat them 53-38. The record was 28-4, so it's the largest one right now. 28-4, it's 32 games. The records for each team was different. It's not all 40 games like it is now, but it was, some had 20, some had 30, some might have had 35, 40, which was crazy. Okay. 1943. The Wyoming Cowboys, 31-2 on the season. That's 33. Coached by Everett Shelton, beat Georgetown Hoyas in New York. I'm guessing that's Madison Square Garden. I might be wrong about that, but they had a good record, good season. Won 46-34. That will start Wyoming's only championship. That might be their only Final Four in history, too. Georgetown, however, has several championships on down the road. The next one, 1944. I only knew this one by heart because of the 1998 championship game. The Utah Utes won their first championship and their only in 1944. They were coached by Vidal Peterson. They beat Dartmouth. Dartmouth's 0-2 in the championship in New York. Utah 21-4 on the season. Won 42-40 in overtime. That's the first overtime game in the championship history. In 1945, Oklahoma A&M, or now known as Oklahoma State, won their first championship, coached by Henry Iba, I think it is. I might be wrong, but that's their arena name, Iba Gallagher Arena. They beat New York in New York, 49-45. A&M had 27 wins and 4 losses. It's pretty nice for them because Oklahoma State's not had the talent that they have then, but next year they'll have some good talent as they get the third best player in the country, Cade Cunningham. So, the next year, 1946, Oklahoma A&M won again. They beat North Carolina, coached again by Henry Iba, in New York. So this one's a close game too, 43-40. Oklahoma State has 31 wins and 2 losses that year. It's the start of North Carolina's legacy that will go on till today. But some of these teams right here, like Oregon, Utah, Wyoming, Stanford, Oklahoma State, and the next one may never come back. Next year, 1947, the year Kentucky won the NIT too. Holy Cross, coached by Doggy Julian, beat Oklahoma in New York again, 58-47. Holy Cross, only championship, probably will always be their only. 27-3 on the season. Holy Cross had some good teams back then. Now it's not NCAA tournament champion type team, but they can be talented sometimes. Now, let's get into the Kentucky counter. In 1948, Coach Adolph Rupp, some say the best coach of all time in Kentucky basketball history, played against the Baylor Bears in New York. Baylor, this could be a rematch this year, but the tournament got called off. Played each other in Madison Square Garden. Kentucky, with the record 36-3, gets their first championship. 58-42 win over Baylor. And if y'all didn't know, the famous back-to-back, first team to ever go back-to-back besides Oklahoma State, the Kentucky Wildcats in 1949, with the same players, played Oklahoma State in the championship. Once again, Oklahoma State had some success. That was in Seattle. Once again, coached by Adolph Rupp. Kentucky 32-2 on the season. Won 46-36 against Oklahoma State. Now we're going to get into the last one, and then we'll go to a little break. The City College of New York. Not sure if that's even a team anymore. Coached by Nat Holman. Played Bradley. They won't be back. That's a Ivy League school in New York. City College of New York. Their only championship. They had success back then too. So going to the new decade, they won the championship 71-68 in the high-scoring championship game so far against Bradley. It'd be City College of New York's only championship and only championship appearance, putting their record at 1-1 in the history books. We're going to go into a little break, and then we'll get in the 50s and 60s, and then we'll take another break. So this is BBN Network on the championship special on April 7th, 2020. Welcome back to BBN Network. I looked up the CCNY Beavers. They are the Beavers. They still have a basketball team. So, kudos to them getting the last win of the 1940 decade, 1950 champion. Now we get into some more Kentucky championships. In 1951, the Kentucky Wildcats, with Bill Spivey, Cliff Hagan, all them good players, went in the town. Coached by Adolph Rupp, played the Kansas State Wildcats on Williams Arena Court in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Kentucky that year, 32-2, one of our best seasons yet. Played Kansas State and won by 10, 68-58. On record, all of our games so far that we've played in the championship have been by double digits, which is good to know that we blow out our opponents when it comes to winning championships. Now, this next one is a start of the second best team in college basketball history. In 1952, Kansas Jayhawks come into town in Seattle, coached by Fall Gallen. 28-3 on the season, played the St. John's Red Storm, or is what they're known as now. St. John's, Kansas. St. John's had no match against the Jayhawks, losing 80-63. That might be the largest deficit so far. No, 1940, Indiana won by 18. But speaking of Indiana, in 1953, the Indiana Hoosiers, 23-3 on the season, coached by Branch McCracken, the same coach that won their first championship, comes into town, 23-3 on the season, played the defending champions, the Kansas Jayhawks, in Kansas City, Missouri, and win by 69-68.